So I want to read this short little passage in Matthew 11. So in Matthew 11, you have the impertinent towns, the impenitent towns. What is the impenitent? Let's take a look at that. Impenitent towns. Impenitent is not feeling shame or regret about one's actions or attitudes, like impenitent elitist. The impenitent towns, Matthew chapter 11, verse 20 to 24. He began to reproach the towns where most of his miracles had been worked with their failure to reform. It will go ill with you, Chorazin, and just as ill with you, Bethsaida. If the miracles worked in you had taken place in Tyre, and Sidon, they would have reformed in sackcloth and ashes long ago. I assure you, it will go easier for Tyre and Sidon, Tyre and Sidon, than for you on the day of judgment. As for you, Capernaum, are you to be exalted to the skies? You shall go down to the realm of death. If the miracles worked in you had taken place in Sodom, it would be standing today. I assure you, it will go easier for Sodom than for you on the day of judgment. So this is Jesus in Matthew 11 saying to the three towns, one, Capernaum, and Bethsaida and Chorazin, that they will, on the day of judgment, be vanquished. They will be sent straight to hell. So I was just kind of curious about what that meant specifically, and so I'm looking up the three towns here, and they all went to hell. He's right. Every single one of them has gone to hell. There's one sort of city that kind of standing close to the ancient ruins, but not really. So Chorazin. So Chorazin is an ancient village in the Roman and Byzantine periods, best known from the Christian Gospels. It stood on the Chorazin Plateau in the Upper Galilee on a hill above the northern shore of the Sea of Galilee, from about 2.5 miles from Capernaum, in what is now the territory of modern Israel. And so the date of depopulation was May 4th, 1948. This is during the Nakba, the fucking goddamn Civil War, right? You just put Israel over there in the Middle East somewhere in 1948. Just put it over there. And then when that happened, that wiped the whole town out. And then you're going to have another one that's going to be put into its place. Because Jesus had condemned these towns, a lot of people say that's where the Antichrist is going to be born. The Antichrist is going to be born in Bethsaida, Capernaum, or Chorazin. And so, where does it say exactly where it was wiped out? During Ottoman control, Chorazin was populated by the Zang Harira Budin tribe. Come on now. It says date of depopulation right here, May 4th, 1948. Here we go. So Chorazin was a village established at the site of the ancient village and depopulated in the 1947-1948 Civil War in Mandatory Palestine on May 4th, 1948 by the Paul Matches 1st Battalion during Operation Yiftach. It's located 8.5 kilometers southeast of Safad. Now, the nearby Israeli town of Chorazin is named for this location. Now, that's interesting. So, it's wiped out, right? It got wiped out during the Civil War in 1948, but they just built one, Chorazin. So, it reappeared, I guess. It's kind of close by. And is that where the Antichrist is going to come from? Chorazin? Maybe. We don't know. It mentions here in the New Testament, it says that it was mentioned with Bethsaida, Capernaum, in the Christian Gospels, Matthew and Luke, as cities of which Jesus of Nazareth had performed his mission, but those towns seemingly rejected his message since they had not changed their ways, so therefore Jesus cursed them. It says Matthew 11, 20 to 24, and Luke 10, 13 to 15. Let's take a look at that. So Luke 10, 13 to 15. Luke 10, 13 to 15. It will go ill with you, Chorazin, and just as ill with you, Bethsaida. If the miracles worked in your midst and had occurred in Tyre, and Sidon, they would long ago have reformed in sackcloth and ashes. It will go easier on the day of judgment for Tyre and Sidon than for you. And as for you, Capernaum, Are you to be exalted to the skies? You shall be hurled to the realm of death. You shall be hurled down to the realm of death. He who hears you hears me. He who rejects you rejects me. And he who rejects me rejects him who sent me. I came in the name of the Lord. My Father sent me, and I came in the name of the Lord. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. So that's Capernaum. No, let's get to Capernaum. So Capernaum, this is Kafar Naham. Naham's village is a fishing village. It was established during the time of the Hasmoneans, located on the northern shore of the Sea of Galilee. It had a population of about 1,500. So the Sea of Galilee, right? Galilee, this is population of 1,500 in the 1st century AD. Archaeological excavations have revealed 2 ancient synagogues, built one over the other. And there, I think I see it, the Capernaum synagogue. So what, they just excavate just a bunch of sand? It got covered over by sand or something? The house turned into a church by the Byzantines is held by Christian tradition to have been the home of St. Peter. Holy moly, the village was inhabited continuously from the 2nd century BC to the 11th century AD. Capernaum is going to go kaput too. The village was inhabited from 2nd century BC to the 11th century AD. So during the thousands, it was abandoned sometime before the First Crusade. This includes the reestablishment of the village northeast of the earlier location in 700 AD during the early Islamic period. It's ruined. It's gone. Where's Capernaum? Nowhere to be found. Where is Chorazin? Nowhere to be found. Chorazin. Capernaum, nowhere to be found. Chorazin, nowhere to be found. New Testament. Capernaum is cited in all 4 Gospels, where it was reported to have been the hometown of the tax collector Matthew, and located not far from Bethsaida, the hometown of the apostles Simon, Peter, Andrew, James, and John. Jesus spent time teaching and healing there on the Sabbath day. Jesus taught in the synagogue in Capernaum and healed a man who was possessed by an unclean spirit. The story is notable as the only one that is common to the Gospels of Mark and Luke, but not contained in the Gospel of Matthew. Afterward, Jesus healed Simon Peter's mother-in-law of a fever, according to Luke and Matthew. This is also the place where Jesus healed the servant of a Roman centurion who had asked for his help. Capernaum is the location of the healing of the paralytic lowered by friends through the roof to reach Jesus. As described in Mark and Luke and Matthew, the town is referred to only as his own city. And the narrative in Matthew 9:2-7 does not mention the paralytic being lowered through the roof. Most traditional biblical commentators, Bengel, Benson, some other names, assume that Matthew 9:1-7, his own city, means Capernaum because of the details that are common to the 3 synoptic gospels. According to the synoptic gospels, Jesus selected this town as the center of his public ministry in Galilee after he left the small mountainous hamlet of Nazareth. He formally cursed Capernaum along with Bethsaida and Chorazin, saying you'll be thrown down to Hades, which is interesting. That's different than what I just read. You will be thrown down to Hades. There's so many translations. You know, does anybody really know what the fuck Jesus said? Because of their lack of faith in him as the Messiah. Well, you don't believe in me? Well, then go to hell, you motherfucker. I'm just paraphrasing Jesus, but that's pretty much what he said. Bethsaida, also known as Julius or Julia, is a place mentioned in the New Testament. It's also house of the fisherman or house of the hunter, Aramaic, Hebrew, ancient Greece, whatever. Julius lay in an administrative district known as Gaulonitis. Historians have suggested that the name is also referenced in rabbinic literature under the epithet Sidon. So according to John 1:44, Bethsaida was the hometown of the apostles Peter, Andrew, and Philip. In the Gospel of Mark, Jesus reportedly restored a blind man's sight at the place just outside the ancient village of Bethsaida. Jesus miraculously feeds 5,000 near Bethsaida. Pliny the Elder, in his natural history, places Bethsaida on the eastern side of the Sea of Galilee. The historian Josephus says that the town of Bethsaida, at the time called Julia, was situated 120 stadia from the lake Simonchanitis, not far from the Jordan River as it passes into the middle of the Sea of Galilee. D. Situ Terra Sancte, whatever. Close to Capernaum, saying it was 6 miles distant from Capernaum. The distance between Bethsaida and Panias is said to have been 50 miles. Although Bethsaida is believed to be located on the northern shore of the Sea of Galilee within the Bethsaida Valley, there is disagreement among scholars as to precisely where. Since the 19th century, three places have been considered as the possible location of biblical Bethsaida: the Bruton village of Messidiye, the small deserted settlement of El Araj, the house of the bay, and the archaeological site of Et Tel. Over time, the latter two locations have come to appear more likely, while Messidiye and El Araj are closer to the Sea of Galilee. Et Tel shows significant archaeological remains, including fragments of fishing equipment. There is a Bethsaida Valley. There is a Bethsaida Valley. It's by the Sea of Galilee at the steep foothills of the central Golan Heights. So the Bethsaida Valley, right, that's close to where the Bethsaida is. So it's like they know the vicinity, they know the area, but it's no longer a little town. It's no longer a city. Capernaum is no longer a town, no longer a city. The only thing you got now is Chorazin. Chorazin was a city set up next to Chorazin. And so let's read about Chorazin. You actually have a population of 352. This is where the Antichrist is going to come from, Chorazin, because it's the last town that's standing between those three. It's a community settlement in northern Israel located on the Chorazin Plateau to the north of the Sea of Galilee. It falls under the jurisdiction of Mevoat HaHermon Regional Council. In 2022, it had a population of 352. The village was founded in 1983 as a moshav, but after it merged with Ma'af, it became a community settlement. It was found just north of the Sea of Galilee. It's named after the ancient Chorazin mentioned in the New Testament, now the site of a much visited archaeological park, which is located about 1 kilometer east of the modern village. So it's 1 mile. It's just 1 mile away. So it's basically the same fucking spot. It was founded on the land of the depopulated Palestinian village of Al-Samakia because of the fucking Nakba, because of the Civil War of 1947 to 1948. Let's read a little bit about that Civil War. What do we got about that Civil War? Man, fucking Wikipedia, the way they cross-reference all this stuff. Isn't this fucking awesome? They cross-reference all this stuff, and then you got this talk page, so people are saying, where'd you get that? You actually have to quote your references. You got to reference all your sources. It's amazing. 1948, 1947 to 1948, Civil War and Mandatory Palestine. I'm going to read all 4 paragraphs to this. The 1948, 1947 to 1948 Civil War and Mandatory Palestine. Are we still going? We only got, what, a couple seconds. It was the first phase of the 1947-49 war. Broke out after the General Assembly of the United Nations adopted a resolution on November 29, 1947, recommending the adoption of the partition plan for Palestine. During the Civil War, the Jewish and Arab communities of Palestine clashed. The latter supported by the Arab Liberation Army, while the British, who had the obligation to maintain order, organized their withdrawal and intervened only on an occasional basis. At the end of the Civil War phase of the war from April 1948 to mid-May, Zionist forces embarked on an offensive later identified as Plan Dalet, conquering cities and territories in Palestine allocated to a future Jewish state, as well as those allocated to the Corpus Separatum of Jerusalem and a future Arab state according to the 1947 partition plan for Palestine. When the British Mandate of Palestine ended on May 14, 1948,